The New Orleans Saints will need Spencer Rattler's best game yet in order to topple the San Francisco 49ers. We got all that and a little bit of lanyard for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, we're going through three things the New Orleans Saints must get right to pull off a big-time upset up against the San Francisco 49ers on Sunday. Why the run defense is going to be a major factor, how the pass protection unit is going to be tested up against that very good San Francisco 49ers defense. And speaking of that very good San Francisco 49ers defense, the Saints will need Spencer Rattler's best game yet in order to topple the 49ers on Sunday. We got all that coming up for you on today's episode. We appreciate you, whether it's your first time or your next time being here with us this time, making us your first listen and being an everyday or here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at Mazda. Just like your favorite players, we sweat every detail because those that make every move count. Pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. So stay tuned for the highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward, Mazda Move and Be Moved. If the New Orleans Saints want to get a win up against the San Francisco 49ers, they're going to need the best game that we have seen so far from second-year quarterback Spencer Rattler, going into his 8th career start, his second this season. The Saints have done a lot of things to make sure that Spencer Rattler is feeling comfortable, and now they're going to have to put it all together for him, and he's going to have to put it all together for them in order to make sure that they get what they need in order to get a big-time upset up against the San Francisco 49ers. Folks have kind of been poking fun about this idea that, the Saints are going to be going up against a Brock Purdy-less, George Kittle-less, potentially Juwan Jennings-less, and certainly Brandon Ayuk-less San Francisco 49ers offense, and so therefore a win would mean nothing for the New Orleans Saints. But it doesn't really matter who plays quarterback when you're talking about competing with the defensive side of the football, and that is going to be a key measure for the New Orleans Saints. And the Saints have done some things to try to help out Spencer Rattler. They played the most tempo, even if you remove the last 4 minutes of every game across the league or every 2-minute situation of every game across the league in week 1. Saints ran the most up-tempo plays. They also stuck in that 11 personnel for over 70% of the game. And the same 11 personnel was out there almost the entire game. Juwan Johnson played 99% of snaps. And then we saw a collection of players that played around 76 to 90% of snaps, including Rashid Shaheed, Chris Olave, Brandon Cooks, and Alvin Kamara. It was those 5 players out on the field with Spencer Rattler for at least 76% of the snaps on Sunday up against Arizona. Why is that important? Because it gives him the opportunity to build a rhythm with those players, get the timing down, and get comfortable. We'll see if the Saints rotate a little bit more on the offensive side going up against San Francisco. But if they don't, that could give Spencer Rattler and that receiving core, that pass catching core, that route running core, and Alvin Kamara, of course, as a part of that, also as a running back, a lot of opportunity to continue to gather up that rhythm. The other thing that the Saints did was that they got the ball out of Spencer Rattler's hands very quickly. Looking across week 1 at quarterbacks that had at least 20 passing attempts, Spencer Rattler was 4th in time to throw. And sometimes we think about time to throw as being something that maybe is a little bit antiquated because of how much quarterbacks move with the ball in their hands now, extend plays, get into second action, things like that. But considering how much Spencer Rattler didn't necessarily do that until late in the game, you could see how much they worked to get the ball out of his hands. Our friend Luke Johnson over at NOLA.com with the numbers 18 of 24 on quick throw opportunities for Spencer Rattler. So very comfortable there. He had a 2.40 second time to throw on average. That was the 4th fastest time to throw in the NFL in that first week. And he was only 3 spots ahead of Sam Darnold at 2.47, who of course was the Seattle Seahawks quarterback going up against the very San Francisco 49ers defense that Spencer Rattler will face this upcoming weekend. And so that is going to be a big part of what the Saints are going to have to do. You got Nick Bosa trying to get there and trying to get after your quarterback. You've got young rookies trying to rush and get after your quarterback. You've got Fred Warner who can blitz from the second level. And you have a very aggressive linebacker focused defensive coordinator in Robert Saleh who can dial up some pressure as well. And so getting the ball out of Spencer Rattler's hands quickly and forcing that defense to play a little bit more honestly. And of course, the run game is going to help with that. We're going to get to that here in just a second as well. But forcing that defense to play honest is going to help you get the best out of Spencer Rattler in the hopes then that you'll be able to take some shots down the field. The San Francisco 49ers will have a rookie starting slot corner in Upton Stout, who's like 5'9" and just under 200 pounds. And they also have a starting rookie safety as well. Both of those players are sure to get targeted quite a bit. And with that rookie safety, an opportunity to maybe be able to take the top off a little bit more in this game with the speed of Rashid Shaheed downfield, with the speed of Chris Olave downfield, and even the speed and size of Juwan Johnson downfield, this could be a major opportunity to finally get some downfield play, which we did not see very often during that Arizona Cardinals game. The longest pass up against the Arizona Cardinals, just 21 yards in that game. That was one of two explosive plays if you include the 18-yard rushing touchdown by Alvin Kamara. Now, speaking of the run game, the New Orleans Saints helped themselves a little bit in one category, but have not yet taken a step forward in one of the most important run game metrics when it comes to measuring the effectiveness of an offensive line. The New Orleans Saints were 21st in the NFL, again, towards the bottom part of the league when it comes to yards before contact. This offensive line does not make a lot of opportunity and create a lot of opportunity for its running backs out of the field. The running backs have to get some of that work done. That was the case last year. It was the case the year before that. And it was the case here again in week one. And so we'd like to see a little bit more from that New Orleans Saints offensive line of moving back that defensive line, resetting the line of scrimmage, and giving those running backs an opportunity to go and pick up some uncontacted yards as opposed to being contacted at or just beyond the line of scrimmage. You saw the Saints, they were at their most effective in the run game when that offensive line was able to buy some space for the running backs to be able to work with. Alvin Kamara's touchdown run was that way. The Devin Neal's best run of the day was that way. Kendre Miller's best run of the day was that way as well. But here's something that the Saints did improve in: yards after contact in the run game, 3.64, well above where this team was last year, number 6 in the NFL through week one. So even if the offensive line does struggle, the Saints, especially with Kendre Miller and Devin Neal, are showing that those running backs can go out there and pick up some yards after they are contacted. That's going to be key while this offensive line gets into rhythm. And of course, getting Taliesin Fuanga back out on the field like the Saints had in the first half, where they were very effective as a rushing offense. Getting him back at practice on Thursday is a major step forward in the hopes of getting him back out there on Sunday, which could massively help out this run game, which then in turn helps your young quarterback as well, who you need the best game of his career so far in order to be able to topple that San Francisco 49ers defense and find a way to a win on Sunday. Coming up next, that pass protection, right? That same offensive line where we're talking about the run blocking, they're going to have to hold up as pass protectors as well. Let's break down some of the metrics around that and how the Saints can get it done as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by our friends over at DoorDash. And just like DoorDash delivers every Saturday, so too did one player, our MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. And this week, we're going with Alontae Taylor. Dialed up for him to have that nickel blitz on that third down, trying to get the ball back to the New Orleans Saints offense with that 2-minute drill. Certainly, they came up a little bit short on the 2-minute drill, but Alontae Taylor did what he needed to do. Great play call by defensive coordinator Brandon Staley. He closed in, knew exactly how Kyler Murray was going to try to get away from that pressure, closed in on him, got the ball back to his offense. That is a player that delivers. And just like Alontae Taylor did for the New Orleans Saints, DoorDash delivers on your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You can save every Saturday that you order. Stack it all up all season. You can save up to $250 with $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday, keep the streak alive, and fuel your game day only on DoorDash. Terms apply, promo period through November 18th. Today's episode also brought to you by friends over at FanDuel. It's the NFL season. It's here. You've been waiting a long time, and FanDuel is making sure that you're ready for every kickoff this weekend with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 on your first bet. And if that bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app this weekend. The New Orleans Saints 3-point underdogs at home, even without Brock Purdy, George Kittle, potentially Jawan Jennings, without Brandon Ayuk. If you feel like the New Orleans Saints can at least cover that 3 points, head over to FanDuel now, get in on that, or bet your first $5 on a heavy favorite. Walk away with that $300 in bonus bets right now. Baltimore Ravens, 11.5-point favorites over the hapless Cleveland Browns. So are you ready to play? Then download the FanDuel app today by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. And remember, you win that first $5 bet, you get $300 in bonus bets. All right, family, the New Orleans Saints need Spencer Rattler's best, and Spencer Rattler needs the New Orleans Saints' best when it comes to protection up front, with pass rushers like Nick Bosa, supplementary pass rushers like Fred Warner on the other side for that San Francisco 49ers defense. They invested in the draft this year with guys like Mykel Williams, who we believe wouldn't be a good fit in New Orleans, but could potentially be a good fit in a defense where there would be some patience for him to develop. And San Francisco ended up landing him. These pass rushers for the San Francisco 49ers, no joke at all. In fact, they generated the same number of pressures as the New Orleans Saints in the opening week, with 10 different pressures generated, according to our friends over at True Media. There's an important distinction here, though, between what the 49ers did and what the Saints did. We'll get to that in a moment. But the way that San Francisco generates its pressure often just comes from sending their front four. Now, they might do some things where they'll send some blitzes every now and then. Robert Saleh will absolutely dial that up and get aggressive. But this is a San Francisco 49ers team that loves to rush four, drop seven, and cover, right? And force that quarterback to hold on to the football. So that's something that you can expect to see up against Spencer Rattler and the New Orleans Saints offense going into this game. They're going to force him to read the field and make decisions. Or they're going to force him to potentially hold on to the ball a little bit longer than he wants to and see if he plays his way into some sacks, makes some sort of young quarterback mistakes. It's something that happens with first, second, third, fourth year quarterbacks even. So an opportunity here for the Saints to be able to buckle down and kind of batten the hatches on that offensive line and work to protect against that four-man rush or five-man rush every now and then when they do try to bring a little bit more pressure. So expect Robert Saleh to disguise a little bit and try to show some simulated pressure. Remember, simulated pressure is kind of threatening pressure at or before the snap, and then at the snap, those players end up dropping back. And then so you have to make a big adjustment. One thing that was really interesting about the New Orleans Saints in 2020 or in the opening game of this season is that they ran a lot of their offense out of the shotgun. And remember, the shotgun takes the eyes down for the quarterback, right? They have to keep their eye, they have to take their head down, keep their eyes down, catch the football off of the snap out of the shotgun, and then look back up. That gives defenses that little snapshot opportunity to change the picture on you a little bit. I thought that Spencer Rattler handled that well against a very well disguised defense and what it is that the Arizona Cardinals like to do. It'll be interesting to see how much the San Francisco 49ers look to do a similar thing to try to throw Spencer Rattler off, throw the offense off as much as possible. Now, it was interesting. The sixth highest pressure percentage in the NFL in week one belonged to the San Francisco 49ers, despite just generating 10 pressures. So in the opportunities that they got, they cashed in on that 41.7% pressure rate, according to True Media. That was one of the highest in the NFL. So even though they only got home for a single sack, they put pressure on the quarterback. The Saints were on the opposite side of that spectrum, by the way. 5 sacks over on the Saints defense. This is where we get to a little bit of the differences between San Francisco and New Orleans. 5 sacks for New Orleans, but only a 25.6% pressure rate, number 28 in the NFL. So an opportunity here, or you can kind of see where things are a little bit different, right? We've talked about this before with New Orleans, to where they would have a bunch of pressures but didn't finish plays that the quarterback didn't have the sacks to show for it. Now they have 5 sacks in a game, even though they didn't generate as much pressure as you would expect for a team that had 5 sacks. Again, 28th in the NFL in pressure rating. But here's the thing. Seattle did a very good job pressuring the San Francisco 49ers. They generated a 43.6 pressure percentage, and Brock Purdy was under pressure a career high, over 50% of his snaps in this game, or in that week 1 game. And so if we flip the script a little bit, that New Orleans Saints defense that racked up 5 sacks could be in position to see a little bit more opportunities to create some disruption, to get after the quarterback, and to go after Mac Jones, who's not going to move around a lot. So these two things are going to go hand in hand. If the Saints can apply pressure on the defensive side, it's going to make their offense a little bit more comfortable. But as their offense gets comfortable, you're looking at timing and you're looking at opportunities. You can't get moved off your spot and you can't get moved out of your timing if you're Spencer Rattler and Kellen Moore going into this New Orleans Saints offense. And that way you're able to really operate and do what it is that you want to do. If you want to get the ball out quickly again, just like you did week 1, if you're trying to replicate that as Kellen Moore, Spencer Rattler, and this New Orleans Saints offense, then you're going to want to make sure that that offensive line is steady and holding up. Again, another reason why it's very important that Taliesin Fuanga is working his way back into this lineup. He has already said that he feels comfortable that he'll be out on the field on Sunday. He made good on his promise that he would return to practice this week. He was there on Thursday. And I know he had a rough game Sunday up against the Arizona Cardinals, giving up 4 pressures during that matchup. But a lot of that had to do with that knee injury. He talked about how it limited him a little bit physically, but how it also messed with him mentally, and that ended up causing him some grief. It was one of the reasons why he knew he needed to be out of the game. Awesome Richards came in. He was solid on the offensive line as a pass blocker, struggled a little bit as a run blocker, but that's a guy that's still learning the playbook. He showed up so recently for this New Orleans Saints team that him kind of getting thrown into the fire, the way that he was able to swim rather than sink, was actually still quite impressive for the young player. So we're going to see how this New Orleans Saints offensive line holds up against whatever it is that San Francisco tries to throw, and that is going to have an impact on whether or not they can get the best out of Spencer Rattler. Now you flip the script and you take a look at the Saints defense trying to put pressure on Mac Jones, who we're expecting to fill in for Brock Purdy, who's now expected to potentially miss 2 to 5 weeks with that toe injury. That's going to be the other side of all this. I mentioned that if you're able to generate and put pressure on Mac Jones, it's going to complement what it is that you're trying to do on the offense. You might be able to steal some possessions for your offense. You might get that opposing defense back on the field a little bit more quickly while they're still a little gassed. And so if the Saints are able to do kind of like what they did up against Arizona, to where they had multiple double-digit play drives, if you can accompany that with short drives, 3, 4, 5 plays over on the offensive side, you can start to wear down that defense a little bit. And then while you're on point with your timing and they're kind of lagging behind, you have the ability to create a little bit of separation here. So the Saints do have avenues here, both offensively and defensively, when it comes to handling the pass rush or producing the pass rush, to put them in position to win this game. And listen, Trent Williams is one of the best offensive tackles in the NFL, but he gave up 10 pressures all by his lonesome last week up against Seattle. The Saints will need to take advantage of the early season slump that San Francisco is seeing from its offensive line. If they can do that, it's going to help to put their offense in even better position. And one of the other things that will help the offense be in a better position for itself is running the football effectively. Let's dive into what the New Orleans Saints need to do that, and why Kendre Miller could be the secret sauce to getting it done. We got that coming up for you as we wrap up today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by Mazda, and it's time for Mazda's Moving the Game Forward, for those who believe that it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and they keep the game moving forward. And this week's moment that helped to move the game forward was Bryan Brezee's field goal block. I mean, what an incredibly athletic play for a 6'5" 6'5", 200 plus pound, nearly 300 pound defensive tackle to go leaping over the center. By the way, great job by the rest of the defensive line, keeping that center down, getting the block and helping to create the momentum that then ended up leading to the Saints being able to be in that game late up against the Arizona Cardinals. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to every Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. If the New Orleans Saints want to pull off this big victory, yes, they're going to need the best that they've seen from Spencer Rattler. Yes, they're going to need protection from their offensive line, but they're going to have to control the line of scrimmage in the run game as well. Something this New Orleans Saints team desperately needs to prove that they can do anyway. So think of this as a little bit of a proving ground for the New Orleans Saints on both sides of the football when it comes to the rushing game, rushing offense and rushing defense, to prove that they are ready to make some strides here, right? This New Orleans Saints 2025 season is all about proving where the foundation of this team is, what the bedrock is, so that the team can begin to build on that in its new vision. So let's start off with why Kendre Miller has to be one of the most important players in this game. And one of the biggest reasons is because San Francisco last week up against the Arizona Cardinals had a 30.3 what's called stuff percentage. Next gen stats getting a little crazy over here. But they have a percentage of rushes that were stopped for either no gain or a loss, right? So 30.3% of the inside the tackles runs, or excuse me, 30.8% as opposed to 30.3. That was the second best rate, tied with the Baltimore Ravens in terms of stopping inside runs, right? Just rushes in between the tackles, inside runs either for a loss or for no gain. So a guy like Kendre Miller, who's a very effective between the tackles rusher and who gained 3 yards per carry after contact last week up against Arizona, has to be a player that ends up getting involved and can attack what it is that the San Francisco 49ers did really, really well last week, which was stopping those inside runs. If he can end up popping off some of those opportunities between the tackles, that's going to open up the rest of that rushing game so that Alvin Kamara can get involved in space, and then Devin Neal can get involved where necessary. And maybe we even see Velus Jones Jr. potentially get involved to bring that great speed to that backfield as well. Was pretty surprised not to see him see a single snap at running back last week, though maybe the injury that he's been managing over the course of this week maybe had something to do with that. He was still the primary kick returner along with Kendre Miller, who, by the way, Kendre Miller, really good kick returner. Again, he showed it last year in a couple of different games and had some nice returns again for the New Orleans Saints on Sunday up against Arizona as well. So definitely something to continue to watch for when it comes to the special team side, winning some of that hidden yardage battle as well. And of course, the Saints going up against their former punter for a second week in a row. Last week was Blake Gillikin. This week, man, kind of sentimental moment, but Thomas Morstead with the San Francisco 49ers. So he's just glad he gets to play in the Superdome again. Going over to the Saints defensive side when it comes to the run game, the Saints gave up the 8th most rushing yards in week 1 with 146, as well as the 6th highest yards per carry allowed and 5.4 yards per carry. But here's the thing, a 70.8% defensive success rate, which was the 7th best in the league. So what does this mean? It means that the Saints gave up the majority of their rushing yards on a couple of plays. Of course, one of them being the Trey Benson 52-yard rush. They can't let that happen again, right? They had an overall pretty successful day stopping the run from a success rate standpoint, but let a couple of these runs pop off to a point to where they got into some trouble and then gave up, again, the 8th most rushing yards last week, as well as the 6th highest yards per carry last week. And when Christian McCaffrey, as well as, by the way, Brian Robinson, who the San Francisco 49ers traded with the Washington Commanders to bring to San Francisco, when those guys are the ones that are busting like big runs and things like that, you can't let that happen because Christian McCaffrey is going to make you pay for that all game long. So you can't give him one. You have to have a large, you got to keep that high success rate without giving up, one of those big 50-plus yarders, because it's going to be a lot harder to catch Christian McCaffrey than it was for this team to catch Trey Benson last week. They also had the 7th most yards before contact and the 12th most yards after contact allowed. So something to watch for there. However, Christian McCaffrey not picking up a lot of yards per attempt after contact in his first week of action. He was the 35th out of 40 qualifying running backs in that metric, picking up just 2.05 yards after contact. Just for reference, Alvin Kamara was 8th in that metric at 3.27, actually better than Kendre Miller in terms of yards after contact per rush. So if the Saints can get their hands on Christian McCaffrey, ideally, they're making the stops there. But remember, the Saints had 10 tackles for a loss up against the Arizona Cardinals, and 7 of them were in the run game. So the Saints are going to have to tackle a lot better. Maybe that's where a guy like Jonas Sanker can be a big time factor. But of course, you need those tackles made in the trenches, on the defensive line, and with that front 7 as a whole. So expect the Saints to very much be adamant about bringing Christian McCaffrey down when they get their hands on him and not allowing him to be vintage Christian McCaffrey going out there breaking tackles and picking up big yards because of it. So yards after contact, yards before contact, going to be very important on both sides of the football. Christian McCaffrey is going to be the key for the San Francisco 49ers. Alvin Kamara, of course, the big focus, but a real opportunity here for Kendre Miller to change a little bit of the conversation around San Francisco's defensive line by being able to bowl through some of that contact inside the tackles and going out there and picking up more yards, as he is apt to do, especially in the inside zone run game. So don't shy away from it, but you got to be able to go out there and beat what it is that San Francisco does very, very, very well on the defensive side of the football. Coming up next time that I see you, we'll get you everything you need to know injury report wise, as well as with elevations. We appreciate you very much for making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. If you see me, please say hi. If you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation. I'll holla at you.